Hello and welcome to the Parent Survival Kit podcast, from surviving to thriving in your household. My name is Gene Schwalen, and next to me, as always, is my beautiful bride, Dr. Sonia Schwalen, pediatric psychologist expert, nationally certified school psychologist. And today, we're going to talk about the weather.
All right, let's do it, weatherman.
So across the country last week, it seems like a year ago here in Texas, I'm wearing actually a V-neck T-shirt. Where last week I was wearing thermals and everything else I could possibly find. You would think I was like living in an
igloo.
An igloo as an Eskimo. But we're in Texas, we're in Dallas, so you blink and the weather changes. But last week was the biggest word from last year, unprecedented.
Right.
With the weather across the country. And so in Texas, we had temperatures in the negative, sub-zero. And just insane. So we had power outages. We had water, no water in different locations. Pipes that burst, houses that flooded. Yeah, so just a lot of craziness. We actually were without power for 3.5 straight days with zero power whatsoever.
And nights.
And nights, yes. 3.5 24-hour days.
Yes, that's right.
There you go.
Thank you.
All right. And so what I want to talk about today is just really... with kids, what are we modeling for our kids? We talk about servant leadership all the time. We talk about everything that kids see is caught, not taught for the most part, or a lot of it is, right? Especially today. And last week was very, very difficult for a lot of people. And there are some people with medical conditions and whatnot and devices that they have to have power for. And so our hearts go out to them. But in general... it's just a little bit different, unexpected type of week for us. Yes, very, very bone-chilling cold. Without power, without heat can definitely be a big concern as parents for our kids, especially if we have younger kids, and the younger they are, the more concerned we are. And then that's totally normal. But what are we modeling, and then how can we actually take these situations and make it a positive?
Okay, so, I hear what you're saying. You can be presented with really big emergencies, like last week for Texas. It was a huge emergency. There's snow everywhere. There's no plows. There's no salt trucks. Texas is not a state that's really equipped for winter. It's not a winterized state, right? And so because of that, if people got on the road, they were literally risking life, right? Because they don't know how to drive in the snow or in the ice. And there might be people who do know how to drive on a winter road, but then do you really want to be on the road next to someone who doesn't know how to drive? So there's so much to take into consideration. But the point is that, life throws curveballs all the time. And it doesn't have to be something like a big winter storm that just kind of like throws us off kilter. It can be any kind of day-to-day thing that can also happen. And in those moments, we really have to... I said this to a family a couple weeks ago, and it just kind of stood out to me when I said it, because I don't know where it came from, but it sounded pretty good, so I'm going to say it on here. As parents, unfortunately, we are always on, So even in our own home, where we want to let our guard down and not have to think so much about what we say or how we say it, right? Because home is a sanctuary. We're supposed to be able to do that when we're at our own house. If we have kids who we know are observing every little move, who take in everything we say and do, you always say it's caught, not taught, then technically when we're at home, we're still on. So we're on all day at work or whatever we do during the day, and then we're on all day at home until the kids go to bed. And so the way we handle situations... And I say that really for those parents who are interested, right, in like intentional parenting. And that's who we think is listening to this podcast, right, at this point. So those parents who are interested in parenting in an intentional way, who want to do it differently than the way that they grew up, or who have reasons for wanting to do it a certain way, you are on all the time. And so the way we handle a snowstorm or the way we handle the slightest difficulty in the day, it needs to be done with intentionality.
Yeah, and finding the actual silver lining in every situation, because we can if we really put our minds to it. And it's kind of funny driving on this, in the snow with those who are experienced and growing up on the East Coast. I'm very experienced in driving the snow. I have no fear. But it's kind of funny also as you get a little bit older, some things that you had no fear about before, now you start having a little bit more fear about. And so I did have some fear driving because I had to go all the way out to a town that was about an hour away to pick up our 8-year-old last Wednesday, and one of the worst days to drive. And I wasn't scared about driving. I was actually more worried, as you mentioned, those in Texas who cannot drive in the snow. So it does make a big difference. But it was a great training point too. So I actually took our 17-year-old who's never driven the snow. He's grown up here in Texas. And so I made him go, even though he didn't really care to. I said, it's going to be about an hour and a half trek because it's usually an hour, but let's go ahead and add another half hour because of the conditions each way. And it was really positive. So I told him about how to drive, how to think about other drivers also, making sure that we are watching, braking even more diligently, watching behind us even more so too. Those who are getting too close to us, maybe we should slow down more and create more space in front of us. So in the event that we do have to stop, we can actually create more space for the person behind us. So there's all these variables we have to think about when we're driving in these conditions that, a 17-year-old kid grew up in Texas would never think about in most cases. So just finding the silver lining.
Yeah. So you took that, you turned it into like a real cool father-son bonding moment. It was a teaching opportunity. Not having power turned into making dinner on our gas stove and essentially pretending like we were camping, right? We were holding flashlights. We were making fun of it, but we were enjoying it. And we were having camping trips in our own house, and the kids enjoyed that. And then, we also made it a point to bundle them up with different layers of different kinds of clothes because we don't necessarily have the winter clothes, but we made it work. We put socks on the 18-month-old her hands because we don't have gloves for her, like things like that.
Right.
And we played in the snow, and we created a slide in the driveway. And
we have a really we have a really steep driveway, and so we created a little jump at the very end, and all the neighborhood kids, they wanted to come over and slide
and use
down.
it. Yeah, and we don't have sleds, so we use surfboards, right?
Yeah,
and
we had these skin boards that are surfboards, for the ocean that we have, and it was
fun, and we made the most out of it. And me and you never once looked at each other, I think, and was like, "Oh man, what are we gonna do?" It was like, "Okay, no power. Let's figure this out." Right? It was like, "All right, kids, we're gonna put some blankets on and turn the fireplace on and come see this fireplace. I don't think it's ever been on before. We actually have one in the house." And we were real intentional, I think, about making the most out of it because we knew they were watching for our leadership.
Yeah, and it's all perspective also, I think. That's really kind of the thing I wanted to kind of hit home on. We've talked about camping a lot. We love to go camping. We haven't done it in a long time. So we talked about glamping also. And this really was the time for us. So luckily we were blessed to have a fireplace that would generate enough heat in one of our rooms to where we could actually stay there. Luckily, we had a gas stovetop to where seeing Dr. Swalen with my 17-year-old with his flashlight holding him above the stovetop, and we had candles lit everywhere. It looked like a Hallmark kind of Christmas type of setting and whatnot, kind of funny. She's cooking these things. She cooked Texas toast
on the
stovetop.
I cooked him a frozen pizza on the stove, which was really interesting.
It was really, pretty cool stuff. And so we're also showing our kids how to survive. And so what I want to talk about is the movie Castaway.
Okay, let's talk about it.
if you ended up being stranded on some island, you have no power, you have no running water, you have no food source, you have no weapons to actually go out there and find a food source. What are you going to do? How do you handle that? Do we just throw all of our hands up and give up and quit? Because some of us do. But what are we teaching our kids? What are we showing them? How do we lead by example? How do we show them how to, we have critical thinking skills that God has given us. And we have the ability to adapt and survive in any situation and make the best of it. And the cool thing is, in our situation, we have a lot of team members that, again, they're from Texas, and you're from Chicago. I'm from the East Coast. We have seen these conditions. Now, not necessarily the blackouts and no electricity, no running water. That's pretty extreme. It can be scary. But how do we lead? And so what we showed our kids and even our team members is that there's always a way. And how can we do this? So again, Dr. Splint's with this flashlight held over her head. She's cooking dinner. We're luckily we have gas heaters, so gas water heaters. So we had hot showers, which was also a huge blessing. Those who don't have gas stovetops and gas water heaters, it was probably a lot worse off than what we had, even with no power. So if you had to choose one thing on the stranded island, but you could choose either power or running water, what would you choose?
Running water.
Yeah, me too, all day long.
Yeah. I think I would figure out a way to make a fire and stay warm and cook and do everything else without power. But I would want water. Why are you asking that question?
Just curious.
Okay.
Well, because if we're on this island, and the reason why I'm asking, because last week we had some people that didn't have any power. We had some people that didn't have any water. And it was kind of like a mix, so that I don't know of anyone, and there probably was, but I don't know of anyone that didn't have any water or power, both. But, so it made me think, so last week in the mix of this, and I didn't tell you this until this week, but it made me think about when we went and took that trip to Belize. So we decided before we got married, we'd take a trip to Belize to see if we actually can enjoy hanging out with each other before we got married. And Dr. Schwalen was used to really going on vacation to different parts of the world, but being in the culture more. I'm used to going to the actual big resorts and living it up, I don't have to worry about anything. If I want something, somebody's going to bring it to me. And so she actually said, no, I want to do it this way. So we went to Belize.
I want to do it my way.
Yes.
Well, I mean, come on. When you go to a country like that, didn't you have such a great experience?
Best believe that.
Exactly.
So we take this flight to, I don't even remember the actual city we flew into, but then we had to take this charter flight, and we were on opposite sides of the plane because there was 2 seats here and there, and it was a really crazy flight. And then we get to the actual destination in Belize we're going to be staying at. Well, not quite, because we had to drive an hour and a half through all these different areas. And so we get to this place that's actually just really kind of out in the middle of nowhere. And
it was awesome.
It was
on the beach.
It was awesome. It was on the beach. The actual hotel we stayed at we would call it a boutique hotel, but not a boutique boutique, because every single night we were there, we lost power. Half the streets in the actual town that we were staying in was all dirt. There's no pavement for the most part. They served at the actual boutique hotel we stayed at. They served breakfast, lunch, and dinner. That was it. And they had them at certain times. If you didn't make it, you didn't get it. Pretty cool.
It was awesome. And then we got around town. You could rent a bike, so we would ride our bikes, or you could get on a golf cart. And you could drive a golf cart around. And
we took a golf cart, and we went to this little place, and we ate this little seafood place right there on the actual shoreline.
We even found young kids that were playing beach volleyball and played with them. I mean, it was really a cool
But I remember
vacation.
those kids. I remember the kids that we saw when we went to eat that little restaurant. And this little restaurant was actually a little bitty. Seriously, it was probably the size of this table. And the parents would make the food, and they had a little deck that you could sit on, and their kids were there, and their kids would come sit down with us, and they wanted to eat our food, if you remember.
Yes, I remember.
Because they probably didn't have enough money they had to provide for their guests and whatnot, which is it was really sad, if you remember. And so we fed them our food. Yeah, so it was really cool. And the parents were like, no. We're like, no, we want to. It's fun. It's awesome. It's a blessing. So that's what I thought about last week. If you remember, even I told you on Sunday before the storm hit, I was like, I really want to go out and buy a bunch of blankets and take it to homeless people who maybe not are going to have anything. And how do we facilitate that? It's just a different perspective. And so I think last week with our kids, what we showed them was how to really thrive in a setting, no matter what, to find the best of it. We had some great bonding time.
Mm-hmm. we had great bonding time. We made a way to make it all work. And they never once saw any of us, me or you, have an emotional meltdown or some kind of moment of I can't do this or what's going to happen or this is awful, or we never said once to our kids, like, don't go outside, you might get frostbite. It was let's go outside and get dirty and make a snowman. And, it's just all about how you approach it when you're trying to lead your children. You can pretty much put anything on the table for your child. And I always say they're going to hear it or see it from you or not, because if you aren't the one to teach them in these moments, they're going to learn it from the world. And if you really want to be intentional in your parenting, you need to go out of your way every chance you get to show them, how to get through something or how to think about something. And then live it out, really practice what you're preaching and really don't preach, because kids tune that out. They feel like they're being lectured at. They feel like you don't understand them. Have them join in, invite them for the drive, or show them how to make a sled out of a surfboard,
It's called Cool Runnings. So if you haven't seen the movie, it's Cool Runnings, the Jamaican bobsled team. We made a track down our driveway with a jump, and literally we're getting 4 or 5 feet of air. And of course I'm out there doing it because I can't. I'm a kid at heart. But yeah, it is, our kids will learn it from somewhere else. Our 8-year-old, when we picked her up and she came back home and she couldn't wait to go outside and play, we got her all bundled up, and she had heard that if she's outside for more than 10 minutes, she's going to get frostbite. Yeah, it is -5 out, outside with the wind chill, but we have the clothes and she had the clothes and
the adult supervision.
And we're going to be okay. And she was out there for a couple of hours.
Yeah.
And when she came in, she was ready to take a hot bath. Luckily, we had a gas heater for a hot bath.
Yeah, and she had a lot of fun.
Lots and lots of fun. And so I just want to kind of close with really one thing that we have learned through some of the things that we have just really been trained on and things that we've experienced is, I think the biggest point here is letting our kids know there's always a bigger purpose in all that we do. We can find a bigger purpose in everything. We still had to work last week. We had to cover for other people in different ways in our businesses. And, our biggest challenge was, does our hotspot work today? Because we don't have internet, because we don't have power. So hotspot or not, right? And it made me think about some things that I talked about earlier this week with, Lima, Peru. And, for those of you who know Lima, a beautiful, gorgeous city on some cliffs. The shoreline is absolutely amazing, breathtaking. The buildings, there's millions of people in the city filled with riches. But what most people don't understand is that Lima is divided into two. And if you talk about Lima, they talk about Machu Picchu and really just this tourist destination spot. But the city is divided in two over this mountain with a 10-foot cement wall that's got this circular barbed wire that separates the rich from the poor. So on the poor side, you've got people that are actually living in these shacks with tin roofs and just some wooden poles built into the mountainside. It's so much dust. It's all sand, and there's no power. There's no running water. There's no nothing. And they have a water truck that comes out every day, every couple of days, every week, that comes in to where you can take your buckets down on the street that you have to go down the mountain for, and you can actually fill your water buckets up if you have the money to do so, because it costs money. And so that's a different perspective that when I thought about that, I was like, wow, that's living that daily. And there's millions of these Peruvians who are living this way. We've talked about, we have this big, huge map in our house to where picking a city out across just around the globe, we can have Ticon City or Tucon or
really
Tycon, whatever.
So anyways, it's a world map, right? And what do? We
pick out a city that we just say, this week we're going to pray about the city. We're going to learn about the culture a little bit with our kids and our family, and we're going to pray for them. And we're just going to kind of understand really what's out there in the world that's different than what we experience here in the U.S.
Puts things into perspective.
Definitely perspective. So when you think about that, our kids are going to sit there and see things that, wow, we got it good. This is fun. We actually had so much fun last week. I was actually kind of sad when it all ended, even though, you and I had major stress having to when I say major stress, we're trying to figure everything out and how do we work, life, take care of the kids, no power. There's no daycare, so they're here with us. So, working beside us and, it was cool. And they saw that too. They saw how we rose to the occasion and they rose to the occasion as a result.
Now, something else to put into perspective was also the fact that we all knew it was temporary. It was only for a few days, right? Yeah. We all knew that by the weekend it was going to be 60 degrees again. Everything was going to melt, and it would literally look, and it does look, as if it never even happened. And so I know there's still people recovering from the side effects of having a flooded house and broken water pipes and all of that, and they have to deal with, right, being displaced and trying to find contractors who are going to come and fix that stuff now because the contractors are super busy because they're getting, calls galore for business at this time. So there's definitely still some things that people are going through because of it. And for the most part, it was perspective of, this is just for a few days and hopefully things will move towards more normalcy. Unlike what we just went through last year, which is we have no idea when this pandemic's going to come to an end. And we all had to change life tremendously and enter into this new normal. And it's been a much longer lasting thing. So it's just really different of how you can put things into perspective.
Yeah. And I think the really important thing that we should really focus on, with all this being said, some of these things are harder to take and deal with COVID. So last week, as we have gone through COVID for the last year, definitely could have been quite a bit harder, than maybe it would have been before COVID. That's definitely perspective there as well. We've been preaching the last few episodes to parents directly about self-care and how important it is, because it's all about us being ourself, our very best self, as much as we possibly can be. We're going to have our moments. We're going to have our weaknesses. We're going to have our failures. When we fall, we fall together. When we rise together, right? So we're going to have those moments. But there's so much going on. We just heard about a family just in a city close to us this past weekend where a very prevalent family. Dad works for a very great company and mom is very successful, and he goes off the deep end and is dealing with a lot of obviously stress and other things going on. Who knows? We don't know. And takes the life of his wife and kids and sets the house on fire. We saw a kid just a few months ago, not too long ago, that we know from our son's high school that took the life of his mom very brutally. There's a lot going on out there. That's real life. That's in our towns and our neighborhoods all across the country. So it's times like these that if we can really learn to really see what's most important, that job doesn't matter, that house doesn't matter, that car doesn't matter, that paycheck, our kids, our family are really going to be it's going to take us to the next level. That's really what's most important.
I agree.
So I guess in closing, the tip of the day is to, let's really try to find the silver lining, the most positive thing we can in every situation, make things to where they can be a learning experience and really make them fun. Challenges are those things that we're going to face, each and every day. And it's not about the challenge or what happens at the end. It's about how we actually go through it.
Yeah. Put things into perspective and be intentional about how you model your response to emergencies and crises and even just daily stressors. And then if you really feel like you're going to go off the deep end or too stressed, right, to deal with it in a healthy way, take care of yourself. Get yourself some help. Find someone to talk to and find new coping skills, because the kids are the ones who see it all and benefit from you taking care of yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. The details matter because you matter. So even you matter. So the kids cannot be as great as they're going to be without you, mom and dad. And there is a lot of things going on we have to deal with as parents. So if you do feel like there's things that you need help with, go get the help. Or if it's your spouse, encourage them, lift them up, because it's very important. So we really appreciate you joining this episode of the Parent Survival Kit from Surviving to Thriving in Your Household. And if you have questions, need something, let us know, and we'll see you next week.